Good morning, Masechet Pesachim, Amud Yomi. We are on Chav Zayin, Amud Aleph. Yesterday we said something very interesting. We said a Braita when it comes to a three-way shita. The Braita said when it comes to an oven, that the oven is lit with Atse Orla. So let's say you have pomegranate from Orla. Pomegranate from Orla is a Sur Behana. If you light your oven with the pomegranate of the Orla, since the Orla is a Sur Behana, you cannot benefit from it. And now you created the oven with this Orla, because a new oven needs to be lit the first time to receive the solidification of the walls. If you created it with that, if you created it with that Orla, so then what happens is you made the oven in Isurana. First opinion, one opinion, it's Asur to use. You can never use that oven again. And what's the reason? It's called Ze v'ze gorem. Because when I bake bread afterwards, what am I doing? I'm baking bread with this oven. The oven is Asur, it's Orla. But I'm also using firewood. I'm using regular normal firewood. And the combination of both is making that new bread, according to one opinion, is Asur to eat. Okay? And in that new bread, that it's Asur to eat, I gotta throw it out. Because it's Ze v'ze gorem. We had a Braita that said this yesterday. Okay? So the first Braita said the oven is Asur. Chachamim say the oven's mutar. They don't hold of that concept. If it's not completely Asur, if there's another additive, another factor that's creating the bread, it's mutar. Then we had Shita de Rebbe. I just want to clear the Shitot up. So the first opinion, which we said, seemingly it's Rabbi Elazar, is Ze v'ze gorem asur. Chachamim don't agree with that. Then we had the bread. The bread is different. Even though the oven is a kosher oven, when I light it with the Atzer v'neorna, the burning of the wood that is burning is creating a fire, and that fire is cooking the bread. So then Rebbe says that bread becomes asur. Because even though the oven is permitted, it's being created directly from that fire, from the wood. And the way that Rebbe looks at it is that it's an extension of the wood. It's not destroying the wood. Chachamim say no. Chachamim say the wood is gone. Once it's on fire, it's not wood anymore. So even the bread is mutar for Chachamim. Then we said that everybody says the gacheret, the coals, everybody says it's mutar. Because the coals are not anymore at all the firewood. What happens? You take wood, you burn it. At a certain point, it's not wood anymore. And you keep them, right? You keep them and you relight them. When you relight the coals, so now they take fire again. And so even Rebbe will say that those new coals, seemingly, they're not an extension of the firewood. There's something, a new entity. The firewood is completely gone. When you light the firewood the first time, and it turns into a flame, which cooks the bread, that's going to be a sur. So you have the three shitot. The three shitot, when it comes, it's Rabbi Eliezer is Ze v'ze gorem asur. So the oven is asur when it's a new oven. You can't use it again. Then you have Chachamim don't agree with that. Then you have Shitat Rebbe, which is middle. You know, Shitat Rebbe says that when you light the wood to burn the fire, so now it's an extension of the wood, it's asur. And then even Rebbe, Chachamim don't agree with that as well. They said the firewood is completely fine because you destroyed the wood when you're lighting the fire. And then the third shita is the gacheret, which is the coals, which everybody agrees is fine. Now, we want to find who the Tanakama was. We said it was Rabbi Eliezer from a Braita. But the truth is, the Braita we said over here is actually very interesting. The Braita which we found, Ze v'ze gorem, has two shitas. It has Tanakama and Rabbi Eliezer. Tanakama says, Ze v'ze gorem asur. Break the oven. If you have the oven, break the oven. Why? Why do you have to break the oven? Because I hold that if you recook with the oven, since you're using two things, one permissible, the wood, and one's asur, the oven, Ze v'ze gorem asur. And then Rabbi Eliezer says also that, Ze v'ze gorem asur, just Rabbi Eliezer there spoke about what do you do with the bread. So let's say you make bread, and the bread is asur. So this bread is asur, it's avodah zarah bread. It was made with the oven, it was made with the wood, and then it got mixed up in another 100. What do you do? So Tanakama says you throw everything in the garbage, and Rabbi Eliezer says you take $1, you throw $1 in the ocean, and then you can eat all the bread. And Chachamim don't agree with that. You guys got that? So they both say the same thing: break the oven. They both say break the oven. Tanakama says break the oven, and Rabbi Eliezer says break the oven. So far so good. However, just Rabbi Eliezer says you can throw $1 in the ocean, and Tanakama doesn't say you throw $1 in the ocean. So we found two opinions that says break the oven. Who is the first opinion? Who is the first opinion? We don't know who it is. So the Gemara is going to propose it's Rebbe. Even though, we said yesterday that Rebbe seemingly doesn't say that Ze v'ze gorem asur, we're going to try to propose that yes. Let's see it inside, it will become more clear. So let's see, the Gemara says, Amar Abaye. Last word in the line. Amar Abaye, im timtza lomar Ze v'ze gorem asur, Rabbi Hainu Rabbi Eliezer. So again, we have the Tanakama that says break the oven. Chav Zayin Amud Aleph. Last word in the line is Amar. It's right in the middle of the page. Zayin Amud Aleph Amar. So just to set it up again one more time, Mechida for the complicated introduction. Tanakama says break the oven, and Rabbi Eliezer says break the oven, also says break the oven. So who is the Tanakama? We know that Rebbe says the bread is usher. He didn't speak about the oven. Well, maybe this Tanakama could be Rebbe as well. Amar Abaye, im timtza lomar ze v'ze gorem asur, Rebbe hainu Rabbi Eliezer. Maybe Rebbe really also holds ze v'ze gorem asur. It's the same as Rabbi Eliezer. V'im timtza lomar ze v'ze gorem mutar. But if you say that Rebbe holds ze v'ze gorem is mutar, acha mishum diyesh shevach etzim bepat hu hanei karot ukisot utzluchit asire. Now, even if you say ze v'ze gorem is mutar, that means that when I'm going to cook with an oven that was created that is asur, but I'm using also kosher firewood. And what is the reason that the bread is asur? Because the fire is the extension of the wood's asur. Still, that opinion, Rebbe will say that a plate is asur. And I'll explain. How do you make a plate? You take clay, you put it in the oven, and you fire it up. And the clay becomes hardened. What if you fire it up with orla? What if you fire it up with orla? So now the plate is also asur. Why is the plate asur? Because when I have this plate that was made from that seorna, whenever I put my soup in the bowl, so I'm using the bowl. I'm using the bowl fully from that seorna. You understand what I'm saying? Even if you said, let's repeat that one more time. I have the firewood. You with me, Mordechai? Mm-hmm. The firewood is from orla. I take this orla and I put it in the oven. And I make bread with it. What's the halakha with the bread? It's asur, according to Rebbe. Why? Because the wood goes into the fire, and the fire goes into the bread, cooks the bread. Bread is asur. What about if I make an oven? An oven is mutar. Why is the oven mutar? Because it's true the oven is asur, but I can still use the oven. Because the next time I use the oven, I'm using kosher and non-kosher. The oven's not kosher, the wood is kosher. But what about if I make a bowl? So I make the bowl. I make this bowl with the atzeorah. I can never use this bowl, according to that opinion. Why can I never use the bowl? Because why am I using the bowl? It's completely made from asur, and I'm not using it with a combination. I'm using fully the bowl to eat my soup. I'm not using the bowl and something else to eat my soup. The bowl is holding the soup.
The oven was kosher?
The oven was kosher.
So you don't have
It's
zevizeh?
spiritually contaminated. It's like spiritually contaminated.
Well, it's surbana. Orla is a tree that I planted the first 3 years. It's asur to use. The orla is asur to eat and asur to use. When I take the klipot of the pomegranate and I put them on fire, it's going to go in. It's going to solidify the bowl. So it's going to make the bread. I can't eat the bread. I can't use the bowl. According to the Rebbe. But Rebbe is going to say you can use the oven. Because when you're using the oven, you're not only using the oven to make bread. You're using two things. When I'm using the bowl, I'm only using one thing. When I'm eating the bread, I'm only eating one thing.
You're not using one, you're using both things. You're still using the oven.
I made the bowl.
You boiled inside the oven?
Two elements.
Not to be confused. When I have a kosher oven, and I use the pomegranate from Olam, and it goes into the bread, I can't eat the bread. According to Rebbe. So according to the same Rebbe, when I have a bowl,
inside the oven?
Yeah, I'm making a bowl. I'm creating the bowl. I'm making the bowl. There's no bread over here. I'm now making this plate. I put it into the oven to solidify it, to heat it up, to form it. When I take it out, it was created with that seorah 100%. And when I'm going to use this to put my steak on, put my fish on, I'm using only this thing. It's not a combination of anything else. So even Rebbe who say a bowl is asur, a plate is asur. That's what we said over here. The only machloket is going to be on an oven, on a kdera. When you take an oven, how are you using it? You're doing things. When you're using a pot. If I made a pan, I didn't make a bowl, I made a pan. And the pan I'm going to make my eggs. What is the pan? So when I'm going to use the pan the next time, how do I use the pan? I'm using the pan with fire, with the new wood. So the new wood and the pan together is going to be called zevig zegolem. It's going to be mutar for Rebbe. I lost you. Yes?
Yeah, but what's the difference between a pan to a bowl?
Very good. The bowl I'm using with my cereal, nothing else. I'm using completely the bowl without any other elements. When I'm using a pan, I put the pan, and can I eat the raw egg from the pan? I need to put firewood underneath the pan. So what's going to make my eggs? The pan, which is asur, and the firewood, which is mutar, the same as an oven. So Rebbe that permits an oven will also permit a pan. And he will forbid a spoon and a fork and a plate and a cup.
Because it's multiple usage versus one usage.
Because
that's it.
it's not multiple usage. It's in order to use it afterwards, I need to combine something else with it to be able to use it. Whereas the bowl, I don't think can
That's what I meant, yeah.
very nice. Some say like this, "Kipligi betanur k'deira." Niman damar ze v'ze gorem asur. אסור, נאמן דאמר זה וזה גורם מותר, שהראי כדאמרי, אפילו נאמן דאמר זה וזה גורם מותר, כדאירה אסורה. דקבלה בשולה מקמא דניתן עצים דתירה. Some say even the כדאירה is אסור. Even the כדאירה will be אפילו נאמן זה וזה גורם מותר, כדאירה אסורה. Okay, so now, Rebbe says an oven is mutar, right? Some will say that Rebbe will say even a pan is asur. Why is the pan asur? What's it in the oven? The oven, I have the oven and the firewood to make the bread. The pan, I have the pan and the firewood to make the eggs, to make the pancake. So why will Rebbe say that some say it's the same, some say it's different? What is the difference? Because when I light up the oven, I put the firewood in first and then I put the bread. You preheat the oven and then you put the bread in. When I make the eggs, I'll put the eggs on the pan and then I'll put the fire on the bottom. So since the eggs were in the pan before there was another usage, so therefore it was using for one moment this pan to hold it. It's also called the usage. I'm using the pan for 1 minute before I put the firewood, so then she used it, it's completely asur. Interesting svara.
What if it's the other way around?
If I put the fire and then put it on the pan and then
Today that's how we do it.
that'll be
We first
mutar.
heat up the
Right.
pan and
But
then
it used to
put
be
the
back then they put it in, they put it on and then they put the fireworks afterwards. Let's go back. Amar Yossi, Amar Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Tanur Shisiko B'Klipe Orla. So this is Rabbi Yossi in the name of Shmuel. He says if you have an oven that was lit up with Klipe Orla, it was lit again with the same pomegranate Orla, Ubikashin Shel Kilaya Keren. Two things which are sur b'ana. Hadash Yutatz. So he's going with an opinion that if it's a new oven, you got to break the oven. Yashan Yutzan. If it's an old oven, you can cool down the oven. Afabo et apat, Rebbe Omer, apat muteret. Chamim omrim apat asura. Problem. Shmuel, when he's teaching the same halacha, he's saying that Rebbe says the bread is mutar, and Chachamim said it's asur. We said yesterday the opposite. We said yesterday in the original Braita we learned yesterday, when I have an oven, it's an old oven, and I'm cooking bread, and the bread is from the Atzeorah. What happens to the bread? Chachamim say mutar. Why do Chachamim say mutar? Because it's true that the tree is asur. The twigs are asur. The branches are asur. But when I burn it, there's no more tree. And Rebbe says the fire is an extension of the wood. Here we're saying the opposite. Rebbe, so we said, there said Chachamim mutar and Rebbe asur. Here we're saying Rebbe asur and Chachamim mutar. The Gemara says, Vatanya ipcha. So it's the opposite we learned in our Braita. Shmuel ipcha tani. First answer is no. Shmuel had a different version of the Braita. That Rebbe was Mekil and Chachamim were Machmin. Look at this amazing thing. Now you're going to see something crazy. How do we decide a psak? So Rebbe, usually Shmuel said, Rebbe Michaverav. I'm sorry, Michavero. Rebbe Michavero. Let's say there's a machloket between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer. Who do we follow? Let's say it's one-on-one. It's myself and God. We're going to go with God. There's rules like that, by the way. When there is one Tana against another Tana, who takes precedence? We have rules. So Rebbe Michavero. Rebbe, whenever he's going to be one-on-one, you have a strong guy, okay? And one-on-one, he can beat anybody. He's a Kal Magar, he's a boxer, one-on-one, he's the champ. But if you put 2-on-1 or 10-on-1, even him, he can't win, right? So if it's 1-on-1, we go with Rebbe. However, velo michaverav, but not 10 against 1. So if it's 10 against Rebbe, Chachamim against Rebbe, we don't go with Rebbe. Rebbe against Rabbi Eliezer, Rebbe against him, Rebbe's going to win and we can take precedence. But and Shmuel says that's usually the rule.
Even if he's right.
Here, even it's Rebbe even against 10. Usually we always go with 10 against 1. But Rebbe in this halacha, we're going to follow Rebbe even against the majority. In other words, Rebbe said the bread is asur. Chachamim said the bread is mutar. Here I hold, Shmuel, that the halacha is like Rebbe. Now the problem is, if I'm going to tell everybody else that, I'm going to say we go with Rebbe, and Chachamim say it's Rebbe says asur, Chachamim say mutar. Rebbe's going to eat it, but I say you can't eat it. But it's only 1 against 10. But we go with the Rebbe like in this case. Nah, it's not. It's Baba Mises. We always go with majority. The yeshiva students will think we go with majority. So Shmuel switches the shitot. V'savar etnaya ipra. So I'm going to switch the shitot. Ki echid dinikum Rabbanan nisura. So that Rabbanan will be asur, even though they say mutar. So everybody will follow Rabbanan, but it's really Rebbe and they won't eat the bread. Got it?
He's going himself against Chachamim.
Shmuel holds we always go with majority, except in this case we go with minority. So we go with Rebbe against his friends. So the bread is asur. But if I teach Chachamim say mutar and Rebbe said asur, everybody's going to eat the bread. But I hold you can't eat the bread. So I'm going to switch the shitot in order to make sure that people don't make a mistake over here. Chachamim say asur and Rebbe says mutar.
But he's going against Chachamim.
Who is going against? Yes, he's going against Chachamim.
He can do that.
Who? Shmuel?
Yeah.
In this case, don't forget, Chachamim and Rebbe, here we're talking about a few hundred years before him. So in that machloket, usually it's an exception to the rule that we go with the minority and not the majority. The problem is people are not going to believe me if I do that, so I'm switching it.
But how does he know that this is...
Oh, that's his opinion. In this case, his opinion is this is what we do. Meaning, how does he know that we're allowed to... It's interesting. How can you go into Chachamim here in this case? Good question. Let's go back to Bishlar gebe gechalim divrei kol apat muteret. So now we're switching subjects. We said yesterday that if you cook the bread on coals, even Rebbe, the Machmir opinion, says the bread is mutar. When it's cooked on fire, machloket Rebbe and Chachamim. Rebbe says asur, Chachamim say mutar. When it's cooked on coals, even Rebbe said it's mutar. Because how do we look at the coals? Coals, is it still firewood or no? Coals is not firewood anymore. The fire is definitely an extension of the firewood. But when it's no more firewood, it's burnt coals. Is that still called atzeh orla? So here we're seeing to say that everybody says it's mutar. The Gemara says, Amar B'Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Chia bar Ashi Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Chad Amar lo shanu ela ad gechadim amumot. There's 2 types of coals. There's one coal that is, died down. It's really dying down, but it still has a little bit of fire, right? It's almost white. You know those coals? It's really, really singed up. And you have another coal, which is just at the beginning when you burn it, it's still 50% firewood and it's still flaming over there. Aval gechadim lo chashot. If it's really, flaming, how does it say lo chashot, Chaim? What word does it give for lo chashot? Asurin. It is asur. Huh? Lo chashot? Abuarot. It's burning, yeah. Huh? Flaming. Burning? Flickering. Lo chashot. Asurin. V'chad amar. So now we have an opinion that's saying Rebbe will only permit Chav Zayin Amud Aleph at the bottom of the page. Last 3 lines. Rebbe will say it's only permitted when it's a coal that is going out. But if it's a coal that's still flickering, Rebbe won't permit. And some said Rebbe even says if it's a real good fire, flickering coal. Nami mutarim. We can understand the one that says lo chashot is asur. Mishum diyesh shevach etzim bipat. A burning coal, which is a brand new coal, is just like wood. There's no difference. So we understand that opinion. But if there's an opinion that says if the lochash is mutar, meaning a firewood is asur for Rebbe, but a flickering coal is firewood is asur for Rebbe. If a flaming flickering coal is mutar for Rebbe, pat dasur dasar the yeshba shevach etzim bepat le Rebbe echem mishkachatne. So what will be, according to Rebbe, pat dasar the yeshba shevach etzim bepat le Rebbe echem mishkachatne. One more time. למדנו אפילו חשות מותרות. פת דסר שיש בה שבח עצים בפת לרבי משכחתנה. מחילה, one second.
You want me to read in English?
No, I just need to think one second. למדנו אפילו לחשות מותרות. פת דסר מחילה, one second. ואחד אמר אפילו גחנים לחשות נמי מותרים. בישלן למדנו לחשות אסורים. משום יש שבח עצים בפת. אלא למדנו אפילו לחשות מותרות. פת דסר, יש שבח עצים בפת.
The pat got shevach from the gechalim.
Mechila, I'm missing something. So, okay, what are we saying? The gechalim is mutar, right? So the gechalim, even Rebbe says it's mutar. One say it's gechalim, it's dying down once, umamot. אבל גחלים נוחשות אסורים. But if it's a really fired up one, it's אסור. אחד אמר אפילו גחלים נוחשות. נמי מותרים. Some say that even those are mutter. Even this fiery one for Rebbe, it's still mutter. Pishnam אמר נוחשות אסורים, משום דשא ורצים בפת. אמר אפילו נוחשות מותרות. The one that is still burning, it's also mutter. Pat dasar. It's actually easy. Okay, we know that Rebbe said that the bread is asur. When is the bread asur? When it's cooked, that Rebbe said. It's when the fire is directly below the bread. When the avuka kenegdo the bama avira etzim bifnato. So there's a difference. So according to this opinion, it's like we said before, if you have firewood, that you burn the firewood, and that fire is cooking the bread, that's asur. But if it's a coal, even if it's a hot coal, that's not the same as wood. That's it. That's very good. Michlan, the Gemara says, if that's true, then we infer the Rabbanan de Pligale Shagwa Afilu Shabuka Kenegdo. Now we learn that avuka, that a fire, according to Chachamim, is still going to be mutter, like we said many times. The bread that's cooked from the firewood is mutter, and it seemed this surah Rabbanan. Now we know that there's a concept of wood that is forbidden. You know, pomegranate that is asur be'anah. If I take an older tree, we know that there is older tree that is asur be'hana'ah. What is the older tree that is asur be'hana'ah for Chachamim? What do you use wood for? Use it to make bread? No, the Gemara says. Shar shifa means I made a seed out of it. I made a table out of it. When you make a seed or a table out of it, that's asur. So that's what it means asur. And I'll explain that one more time. We have a concept which is called orla. Orla is trees which are the first 3 years. These trees of the first 3 years are asur to benefit from. So if you say it's asur to benefit from because you're going to cook with it, that I understand. Rebbe says you cook with the firewood goes into fire, you put it on fire, it goes into a flame, the flame goes into the bread, that's asur. But if you say that that's mutar, so where did we find the concept that firewood is that wood of orla is asur? Where did we find that? So we found it in a chair. We found that in a table. Yeah, when you burn the wood, that's gone. There's no more wood. However, if you make a chair of it, that's called using the wood of the orla, which is asur. Simple. By mine Rabbi, we're just going a little bit more. It's not so hard. By mine Rabbi Chama ba Rabbi Rami bar Chama mirav Chizda. Another 5 minutes. By mine Rabbi Rami bar Chama mirav Chizda. Tanu shisiku be'atzei hegdesh. So now, if I light this is different. It's not anymore orla. I light the oven with the trees of Hegdesh. Hegdesh is something which is given to the Beit Mikdash as a donation. So you come and you give a donation to the Beit Mikdash, they own this wood. If you light a fire with that, and you cook the bread with it with that, don't forget, Chachamim say when you light with orla wood, the bread is mutter. What if I light with wood of a Hegdesh? Hegdesh is owned by the Beit Mikdash. Will that be the same anacha? Would the bread be permitted here the same is permitted there? Amali pat asura, the bread is asur. Uma ben zole orla. What is the difference? Why orla bread is mutter and ben bread of hegdesh is asur? Amar Rabba ach yashna. There's a big difference. Orla betira b'matayim. Hegdesh afilu be'elef lo batim. There's a concept of bittul. When I have a drop of milk that falls into a pot of meat, if there's 60 more times meat in the milk, then it's mutter. But if I have orla that falls in, there's a bittul, 1 in 200. If I have hegdesh that falls in, there's no bittul. Even in 1,000, there's no bittul. Hegdesh is never batal. So you see that it's much more machmir. So we're going to put a stringency over here on the wood that comes from hegdesh and not the wood that comes from orla. Since there's a concept of bittul in orla, there's no concept of bittul in the hegdesh. That's where we're going to be machmir. The Gemara says, got it, John? Yeah. The Gemara says another question. That's not even a question. How could you ask that question? That's simple. Really, the question was like this. If there's a question to ask, here's the question to ask. You know the halacha of me'ilah is like this. Don't use anything from the Beit Mikdash. If you use something from the Beit Mikdash, you just took it away from ownership of the Beit Mikdash. You break it, you bought it, and you're going to pay for it. And it's not anymore kadosh. I'll give you an example. There's a chair of the Beit Mikdash. Okay, it's not a korban. There's 2 things that could go out of the kedusha of the Beit Mikdash. The Beit Mikdash could own things in 2 types of ways. It's kedushat aguf or kedushat damim. There's an item which is inherently holy. That's a korban. An animal that's a korban can't do anything with that. That is owned by the Beit Mikdash. And that even if you cut the ear, it's still owned by the Mikdash. It does not become, you can't bring it anymore, but it's not your property. And you have also a kedisharet. If you have a menorah or something, if you break that, you don't buy it. You're never going home with that. But anything else, a chair of the Bet Mikdash or whatever it is, you break it, you buy it. You guy used it, he broke it, he made a scratch in it. You're going to pay the value. You're going to give 20% more. This we're going to do something else with it. It's not going to be owned by the Bet Mikdash anymore, and you're going to bring a korban. So as soon as you use something, you misappropriate usage of something of the Mikdash, you actually took it out of its status of holiness. So when you have firewood, it's owned by the Mikdash. And they had a lot of firewood, because they were lighting fires all the time. So the guy took something that's owned by the Mikdash, and he lit firewood. He lit his fire, and he took it home, and he's starting to bake his bread with it. So what happens, as soon as you light it, it's called Me'ilah. And once it's Me'ilah, it's not owned by the Bet Mikdash anymore. So why would we say that the bread is asur? It should be that bread is mutar, because as soon as you put it on fire, it's not anymore owned by the Bet Mikdash. So it's not Bet Mikdash wood that made the bread. It's regular wood that made the bread. You owe money to the Bet Mikdash, but it shouldn't be that's asur. That's the question. So let's read that again. El Amar Rava. We have a question is like this. And Amar Rava, ikasher re'ai kasher. Halo ma'al hamasik. The guy who put it on fire did me'ilah. As soon as you did Milah, now it's not owned by the Bet Mikdash anymore. So now there's an exception to the rule which I just told you. Certain things will never have Milah because they're not really owned by the Bet Mikdash, even though there's a certain Isra on them. I'll explain. Most korbanot are like owned by the Bet Mikdash, and you don't really eat much of it. There's one korban if you want to go to the Bet Mikdash. You know, when you bring the family for no good reason. I just want to come close to Hashem, I want to experience the Bet Mikdash. So you bring a shlamim. If the guy's an Avera, he brings a Chatat. If he has bad thoughts, he brings an Ona. If he did an Avera by accident, he's not sure, he brings an Nasham. If he has to say thank you to Hashem, he brings a Todah. And if there's no reason, I'm bringing a shlamim. Shalom, peace. What are you here for? Just for the experience. That is really yours. The Kohen only gets a small piece of the chest, and the emurim, the fats, go in the Bet Mikdash. But basically, you're eating the whole thing. Since it's not really owned by the Bet Mikdash, there's no me'il on it. It's still asur to use. Still, we put an isur of using on it, but it's not called me'ilah, so therefore it doesn't go out of the property of the Bet Mikdash, because it's not really owned by the Bet Mikdash, even though it's asur. Meaning, what we're saying over here, the firewood of Hegdesh that we're talking about before, is not a regular they used to have a room with all kinds of wood. It's not that you went and took that wood. You took your wood of your shlamim, and I'll explain what that means, because the shlamim is an animal.
You bring the wood also?
Yes, basically like this. You can say like this. A guy could say, I'm giving my watch. The guy would say he's giving his watch to the Bet Mikdash, and with that watch, or I'm giving my watch for a shlamim. You could do that, right? The same way you can say an animal, this animal is a shlamim. You can't do anything normal with it. You can't eat it for dinner. You got to bring it as a shlamim to Bet Mikdash, although it's not fully owned by the Bet Mikdash. You see the middle ground? If a guy says this is an ola, this is a chatat, that's fully owned by them, and it happens to be in your possession. If you say the shlamim, it's yours, but you can only use it in the Bet Mikdash. Okay? Now you can half hekdesh. Very nice. It's a half hekdesh. That's why there's no meal.
No meal on it.
Exactly. It's a half hekdesh. Now if I say, the guy says, my watch will be a shlamim. What do you mean your watch is shlamim? The guy's in Montreal. He's taking a $1,000 watch. This watch I'm going to buy shlamim. How are you going to do that? I'm going to go to Jerusalem. I'm going to sell it, and the money I'm going to buy the korban.
It's
so
none. It's called it none.
Yeah, he's matpis the kedusha on the watch, and then the watch he can't do anything else with it. He has to switch the money of the watch for a shlamim. You can do that with the wood as well. So the guy said, this wood will be for a shlamim, and then he didn't bring it to Jerusalem. The guy's living in Tel Aviv. He has, this would be for the shlamim. He's supposed to go to the Mikdash. It's not really fully owned by the Mikdash, but it's still assumed to use. He took that wood and he started to make his bread with it. And he said, oh yeah, I've used the wrong wood. What do we do with that wood? As soon as you burn it, it's not anymore owned by the Mikdash, it's chulin, so the bread is mutar. No, that's not the case. This is from the shlamim. The shlamim is owned by the Mikdash, so it makes your bread asur, but it doesn't go out of the possession of the Mikdash. So this is like a middle ground. And we found, this is according to Shitat of Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda said also something interesting, that when I told you this halakha of Me'ilah, I know we're going fast, Me'ilah is only according to Rabbi Yehuda if you do it on purpose. If you don't do it on purpose, if you do it by accident, but if you do it on purpose, according to Rabbi Yehuda, there's actually no Me'ilah, and therefore it's still asur, but it doesn't become chulin, doesn't become non-holy property. I'll read that inside, I'll tell you one more time, we'll finish there. The Gemara says, Amar Papa be'atzeh shnamim askinan, v'adivad Rabbi Yehuda. Damar hegdesh b'shogeg mitchalen. Rabbi Yehuda said a similar concept which we're using over here. The similar concept of Rabbi Yehuda is if you do me'ilah by accident, then it becomes mitchalen. It becomes mundane property. B'mezid eno mitchalen. But if you did it on purpose, even though you did an avira, and even though you're going to pay, it doesn't become mundane property. B'mezid mai tama lo kivan delo bar me'ilah. On purpose, it's not bar me'ilah. It doesn't go it doesn't go to chulin because it's not the halach of me'ilah. Hu delo nafik lichulin shlamim nami kivan delo bar me'ilah ninhu lo nafkim lichulin. So the shlamim as well, since there's no me'ilah, it doesn't go to chulin. I'll just say that one more time, and we'll stop here. The concept of me'ilah is that if something is owned by the Beit Mikdash, fully owned hekdesh, so long it's not like a menorah or something, if you use it, it goes to chulin. You got to pay for it. You break it, you buy it. There are two exceptions to that rule in Shitat Rabbi Yehuda. The exception to the rule number one is if you do it on purpose. If you take a chair of the Beit Mikdash and you sit on it by accident and it broke, you weren't supposed to use that chair. It was only for the Kohen, whatever. You break it, you buy it. Now it's actually yours, and you're going to pay the value plus 20% plus a korban. But if you did it on purpose, we don't give it to you. You're still going to pay, and it doesn't go to chulin. We're keeping this. You have no rights to take it. You're going to pay it. You're going to pay for it, but it's still our property. So there are certain things that don't go to chulin. The same thing with the shlamim. The shlamim is a middle ground. The shlamim is sort of on Beit Mikdash, but not fully. Because since you're eating it, it's not really theirs, so there's no me'ilah on it, to the point that if you use the wood of the shlamim, it's going to come to chulin, and therefore your bread is going to be mutar. That's not the case. It's asur, it's not really owned by the Mikdash, it's just asur to use. So it's very similar to orla. So it just means that if you said, bottom line, if you said this wood will be to buy shlamim, and then the guy made a mistake and he cooked his bread in the oven with that wood, so the wood now is just asur wood, like orla or like klaim, and therefore he made the bread, and according to the sheet that says that the firewood turns into the fire and turns into the bread, it's asur. We'll stop here. Chazak Bo.